we're here to learn what not to do in Scrum. How many people here have been practicing Scrum for less than a year? A year to 3 years? Okay. 3 to 5? Over 5? So I'm sure all of you would have a lot to contribute because you must have made some mistakes. Right? If you haven't, please come down to me. But the point of this presentation is not for me to talk the most, but for all of us to leave this room having learned something new about Scrum, and that includes me. So I would encourage all of you to participate. If you have questions, stop me, ask me, and we'll discuss it. If you have something to share, because something that I'm showing resonates with you, you were in a similar situation, please share. The whole point of this presentation is to learn from each other. I'm sure you would have been doing anything else, right? You would have been in any other session, been with your family and friends, been playing blackjack outside to make some money, right? But you're here. I'm not going to get you to regret your decision, but sharing is going to help us all get the most value possible out of this session. Anyone knows who that is? I'm going to keep dancing. Any other guesses? Second guess. We're just warming up. As I said, it's going to be an interactive session. Maybe developers.
Everybody.
Everybody? Good answer. For me, this was the project manager who was just told, we're going Agile. Once upon a time, there was a project manager who was told, we're going Agile. We're adopting Scrum because that's the best thing outside. Or you were the same boat. When did you move from waterfall to Agile?
What?
Yeah. Oh, you moved right here. Oh, so you are this baby right now. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. And what happened next was pure chaos. User story points, iteration planning, grooming, nothing was helping me reduce that chaos. The obvious conclusion for me was following Scrum was a mistake. Anybody else felt that here ever when they started? Okay, so I'm not the only one. No, I stayed with it. Okay, all right, thank you. Here. So it took a lot of training, a lot of discussions, a lot of time to realize it wasn't Scrum that was a mistake. A lot of other things, but not Scrum. Jay-Z is a wise, wise man. If you don't know that already. So I'm going to go through the mistakes I've made. I'm going to go through some of the mistakes I've seen others make throughout the process. We still make those mistakes. And I would encourage all of you to share your mistakes as we go. Sharing Scrum Master and Product Owner roles. And that's like a no-no in your Scrum handbook, the first thing that you hear. But anyone here has experienced this or seen other teams do that? Okay, you know, there you go. Yeah. And there are business constraints sometimes that kind of force you to do this, right? When I moved into the Agile world, I almost had an identity crisis as a project manager. Who was I? Was I a product owner? Or a Scrum Master? Or was I both? Why might one have this identity crisis? Any guesses? If, for people especially who've already seen this. There were a few people who said they're in the same boat, so why are you guys doing this? Is it because of business constraints? Is it because you just didn't know?
So if you don't have a product owner that is engaged, as a Scrum Master, you kind of have to take that role.
So bleeding into each other, even if you have one designated, you're really playing that role for them, right? That's a good reason that happens.
Could be previous roles that you're in, have certain descriptions of what you do that match into the role. Clearly defined.
Yes, unclear responsibilities. Anything else? Anybody wants to add?
okay, it's insane.
So all of these happen. And if you were mathematically inclined, when I took a step back and I was thinking about it, it's not really that difficult to make this mistake. If I had a team, a very simple team structure, no technical writers, no analysts, of X engineers and a manager in a waterfall model, I was told to go Agile, follow Scrum. So I'm supposed to have Y engineers, a product owner, and a Scrum master. So if you are, again, mathematically inclined, it's a very simple equation to solve. Either X is equal to Y plus 1, which means you're giving up one engineer to play one of these roles, or your manager plays both of these roles. Now, what's the care about of a project manager? What does the project manager care about? Timely delivery of a working product, a good quality product. It's kind of the care about both the product owners and the Scrum Master as well. It's a shared responsibility. So it's really not that difficult to make this mistake. That's why I feel bad about making this mistake, but when I saw a few things raised up here, I realized, and before I worked too, that it's really, people make this mistake because of these reasons. So what happens when you make this mistake? Why is it bad? Is it okay to have a share? Why does Scrum tell you not to do this? People who are doing this, what are the main challenges they're facing right now? Thank you.
Conflict of interest.
Do you want to elaborate? Anybody else wants to elaborate with that? Why is there a conflict of interest?
Well, the product owner wants to see the product do well go farther, whereas the Scrum Master is looking at numbers that are a tangible thing. If they want to keep their numbers going,
Yes.
Well, Scrum Master really is setting, I mean, they're there to kind of help the team do what they need to do and not really be part of that team per se. And the product owner is actually very interested in what that team is doing. So he's going to drive that team, whereas the Scrum Master will help assist that team.
Yes. How I thought about it was, as a product owner, I would want as much done as soon as possible. I want the team to deliver as much product as possible. As a Scrum Master, I'm watching out for the team, negotiating with the product owner, saying, this is really not something we can deliver at this much time in a healthy environment. I don't know about everybody else here. I'm not good at negotiating with myself. It's not a skill I have. Even when you do have separate product owners and Scrum Masters, as, what was your name again? As Pete was saying earlier, it's easy to have those roles bleed into each other. We've had times when our engineer is playing a part-time Scrum Master role. So a lot of times our product owner steps in, try to play that role for them. This leads to low accountability, which in the end leads to confusion and a less productive team. This happened to us. This happened to me specifically. I worked with the global team, and it was hard for me to let go and just be the product owner and not try to be their Scrum Master, run their Scrums for them. Mostly because we did not have a dedicated Scrum Master there. That led to late night meetings for them, early morning meetings for me, a lot of confusion of who's doing what. In the end, what we decided to do, I actually talked to their people manager and said, hey, even if we have an engineer play this role, can we build this into their job responsibilities? So they're actually now graded on their Scrum Master role along with their engineering skills. This is not just something they do on the side. That helps build up the accountability. And I've seen a difference since then. It's still not as good as having a full-time Scrum Master, but we have to work with the business constraints. How to avoid this? If you did not have these business constraints, the first thing you really should do when you're going Agile and adopting Scrum, talk to your team about what's the structure of your team. Discuss each Scrum from Waterfall? Right? No, no, no. Anybody did? Nobody, okay, you did. Good? So 2 people in this big room, which seems like this is something we should all be doing. Mistake number 2, excessive estimation. I'm not going to talk about #no estimates here. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're spending so much time estimating, trying to get accurate estimates, which in itself is an oxymoron, realize that accurate estimates. They're 2 contradicting words. If you're spending a lot of time doing that, you need to take a step back and look at your process. Maybe you need to do that, or maybe you don't. The point of this picture is not just girl power, but really, even if you have the smartest ninjas on your team, like really smart developers, and you're asking them to estimate really complex problems, you might be making a mistake. Have you taken a step back and asked yourself, why are you estimating to such a granular level? What is this information used for? Are you using this for driving marketing strategies? Are you using this for billing clients? Is this information required by your higher management? Is this information you are seeking because it makes you comfortable drive your own projects? Like, what is the flexibility you have as far as the granularity of these estimates go? We never discussed that. We just had a tool, we started estimating. We went to a point we were estimating our tasks, which is not healthy, and I'll talk about it in a little bit why. But I want to use an example first. How many people here flew into Vegas and not from Vegas? Pretty much the whole room. Okay. So you've all been to the airport. Now if I ask you, I want to go, my flight is at 5 p.m. today, and I want to go to the airport, what time should I leave this place?
No.
Now? Any other times? Anybody else wants to say a time? It's 2 right now. 3. 3? 3? 2:45. Now it's 2. Okay. Now if I tell you, I'm going to hold you responsible for that estimate, and if I leave at that time and I miss my flight, you're going to have to pay for it. That's what we really do with estimates. How granular do you really want to get? Should I be asking you, what time should I get my cab? Is there going to be traffic? What's the line at the airport like? Should I apply for that? There are things that I can break this down into, where I can just put a buffer in and say, yeah, maybe if I leave now, there'll be like I have 15, 20 minutes. Like I'm not saying don't estimate. I'm not saying leave before and miss your flight. But I'm saying don't go crazy estimating. Because the time you're spending doing that, you could be doing a lot of other things. What you could be doing is you could have been brainstorming your own user stories, trying to figure out what is the best possible solution to implement this. You could have been talking about the requirements and clarifying. How many people have had user stories at the end which were not really meeting the requirements? Yeah, you can use that time in your planning meetings where you're estimating to talk about the user stories and clarify the requirements. I would admit, it wasn't me who came up with this idea. It was one of the developers on our team. They said, really, do we need to, they asked me once in a retrospective, do we really need to be estimating our tasks? Or is it okay if we just use that time? Because again, it's India and unclear. We have a time difference. We have limited amount of time right now. Can we talk about the acceptance criteria and clarification on the requirements? And I was like, yes, I don't need to know estimates of your tasks. I really don't. You tell me 2 days, and if it runs over to 3, or if you finish it in 1, I can work with averages. But we can, yes, I would rather you implement something that
So are you saying that you don't have to estimate your stories, or are you saying after the stories and after I determine my story points and I've got that information, the individual tasks that I need to do to complete the story, I don't need to estimate? Is that what you're saying?
So the question is, what level of granularity I'm recommending on estimation? And the answer is, whatever your team needs. My team did not need task level estimation. We needed user story point estimation, which is how many days is this going to take? But the trick there is, sometimes one big user story broke down into multiple user stories. So if I had a user story which was 3 days of work, and if I can break it down into 3 other user stories of 1 day of work, we just did 3 days of work is fine. Whatever you need to do to get that working is your responsibility. I don't want to be sitting here and dictating. So whatever you and your team feels comfortable with. If you need to have task level estimates, do that. But I highly doubt anybody needs to do that. Sometimes it's okay to do big chunks. There's another team that I work with, they actually don't even do user story points. They do a little bit higher than that, I would call it. It's not really epic, it's somewhere in between. They don't break down their big user story. They say, we're going to implement this feature and it's going to take us about 3 weeks to do it. And leave us alone and don't ask us again. And that model works for them. And I haven't heard any complaints about it. Because they're the ones who said it, they make it work. And that's the bottom line. Just estimate as much as needed. Don't spend too much time with it. Not focusing on technical debt. There is one word which summarizes why we don't focus on technical debt, at least to me. Anybody has a guess on what that word is? And it can be different for different people.
Product.
Product, very related to what I was thinking.
Delivery.
Delivery. Any other words? At least why your teams are not focusing on technical debt if they're not?
Pure quality.
Quality.
There's no visibility.
No visibility. Yes. The word to me is related to all of these, and it's cha-ching. It's all about the deliverable. Customers want to pay for working products with features. Your business wants to sell these products to make money. What is the easiest thing to ignore? It's the thing that is the most difficult to capture the impact of on your business. That is your technical debt. This is why it gets ignored, at least sometimes. But what really happens when you're ignoring technical debt? You're making everybody else inefficient. In your team, everybody is inefficient, maybe even unhappy and dissatisfied. There can be unexpected delays because of unaccounted work. You don't know how much technical debt you have, and sometimes you have to resolve the technical debt before your product goes out of the door. Worse, your product goes out the door without resolving technical debt. Maybe your quality is not as good as expected. You're actually going to lose business in that case. How to avoid it? This is interesting because I don't think even our team is doing such a good job at it right now. In theory, you want to sit down with your team and talk about technical debt. Talk about how to measure it. What is the definition of it? What are the various tools you want to use to capture it? And then how much do you want to prioritize it? And you want to have everybody on the same page. A, it's hard to get people on the same page about technical debt. And B, it's hard to really capture it. I am capturing it right now using the issues and bugs that get filed, and we keep a list of it. We weren't originally doing this and accounting for it in our integration planning, but we've started pulling in our bug counts and things because we use a different system to track our bugs. We've started pulling in our velocities for bugs and estimates and times we're spending, especially in high severity bugs, into our planning meeting and dedicating time for that. I would be interested to know how other people are capturing technical debt here.
So you kind of help the team itself with all the customers for the product, and so they get a voice at how many and stuff like that in the back of reading there's say you set our own from the cross and that means to resolve the actual to it, and then they get prioritized on the other customers.
should always be focusing on your technical debt, always getting them right. And implementation is harder because it's hard to convince the business to have a person dedicated to something they're not going to see immediate impact of. But yeah, adding it to the backlog and prioritizing it with the rest of the user stories is one way to do that. You like that?
One way, the way I looked at it is which stories are really off in their estimate. Like you estimated for like 3-story point and actually ended up spending much more time on that. And then we look at those in the retrospectives. That gives you a good idea of where your technical debt lies, and then that part you can take it up as one story in the subsequent story.
Never thought of that. Okay. So what you're saying is you estimate, and if your estimate is way too off, you assume that there is technical debt in there that caused that. Okay. Hmm?
And it's try to translate it into what it means to the user when you're creating the story. You don't see that that is like what was true for the user. You resolve this issue with architectural problem that we have. So it has a meaning. You can argue, you can justify it. It's not a financial or a customer. Why is that time?
Okay. You translate the technical debt into the user story. How's that everything? Anybody else wants to add anything? Not capturing non-functional requirements. This is very tied in to the first one, at least I feel that way. It's difficult to capture, difficult to measure the impact of this on your business. That's why it gets ignored a lot of times. It is something that we need to, we should be prioritizing, especially if that is something your business depends on. Performance, scale, quality. It'll be different for different products. But again, it doesn't get prioritized because of that cha-ching factor that comes in. It makes your team inefficient. You can have an unhappy team, unhappy customers, that is worse. Unexpected delays. You really, what you're doing here is if you're not prioritizing your technical debt, your non-functional requirements, is you're mortgaging your future to release something in the present. And that's what you have to ask yourself. Being long-term versus short-term. Are you running to the exit as fast as possible? Or are you getting as many points as possible and get those extra lives? Even if that means there's a little bit of a delay in getting to the exit. How many people here have played Mario? You're getting those points, right? How to avoid it? It is very similar to technical debt. Gather regular dev feedback. Because your developers working in the code know what the state of the code is. Prioritize it, measure it. If you have to create user stories, as you were saying, or if you want to track it as bugs, do that, but sit with your team and define the criteria. Make acceptance criteria for each user story. If you have a search functionality you're implementing, make a part of that acceptance criteria. It needs to be less than 10 seconds. Then right there, it becomes a part of your user story as a requirement. What we did recently for capturing our non-functional requirements, we still, again, don't do a good job at technical debt and non-functional requirements, I think, but we've taken a step in that direction. What we've started doing is create user stories, which are tests. So write a test that would make sure that everything is happening in this much amount of time, like performance tests or quality tests. And then the moment any of the other user stories break that, because it is run every time somebody submits a code, we find out. But the trick there is identifying all those non-functional requirement parameters. That is still something that needs human intervention in discussing and handling how. Anybody wants to share how they capture non-functional requirements? Anybody here who does capture non-functional requirements? How do you capture it?
Usually now we work in the same kind of domain, so we have an idea of what non-functional requirements are typically missed. We created a kind of catalog of non-functional requirements that at the start of the project we ask product owner, do you need this, do you need this, and we use that as part of the user story.
How do you enforce it?
We
Tests?
can't, we just a guideline.
Okay, guideline. Okay. Who else said they capture non-functional learning? How do you do it?
So we have kind of a list of standard ones from a security perspective. A lot of them are focused on the architecture and then moving on to the design. So it really depends on the solution that we're gathering the requirements for, how we do it. But we include them like in our RFPs if we're looking for a solution off the shelf as well. They're not complete.
Yeah. Well, at least you started, right? There's something.
Yeah, we just reference excuse me, as a user story as part of our Scrum or it's in the backlog, we know when it's going to happen, we can go into that story.
Okay. And a separate user story in the backlog. Anybody else wants to add anything to that? Well, for the rest of you who did not raise a hand, we're not capturing non-functional requirements. We should be. Lack of training. If mistakes could have a favorite, this would be my favorite. Mostly because of this picture, I will admit. But also because it emphasizes that there is a need for the whole team to adopt Scrum. Not just your Scrum Master, not just your product owner, your whole team. When we decide to adopt Scrum or go Agile, what do? We read a book on it. We figure out there are 2 new roles. We need to train those 2 new roles. We need to figure out what they do. Right? So send Scrum Master and product owner for training. Given again, it's sometimes because your business cannot afford to send the whole team. But that's usually what we do. That's what we did at least. And that can lead to a very unhappy and miserable Scrum Master product owner. I was one. I know that. Worse, it can lead to a very unhappy and miserable team. Because unless you're doing Scrum right, there are a lot of ways to make your team miserable. Believe me. You cannot fully leverage Scrum and you start complaining about Scrum and you think you're being inefficient because of Scrum. It's unless your whole team can internalize what Scrum core values are, they're not going to be able to adapt their processes, contribute to your retrospectives. Right? How to avoid it? Train the whole team. Whether this means sending them, whether this means having internal trainings. If you have 2 people who are trained, make sure they organize internal trainings. Gather regular feedback about Scrum, not about your product training, about how the processes are working. If your team is complaining a lot about Scrum, then you need to look into it and figure out what's missing. What is the mistake we're making? How many people here have sent the whole team for training? Curious to know. We never did. You have sent the whole team to training? Awesome. You have? No. The rest of us are either miserable Scrum Masters and product owners, or we're getting there, right? Another very important.
I was just going to say one of the things that we found effective when we started up is we hired a consultant to come in and do our training for a team. And then we also hired a temporary Scrum Master who had some time. We had quite a few teams. And they actually mentored our Scrum Master over the period of like 6 months or whatever. And kind of do one-on-ones regularly with them to kind of do a push-up. And after that, we eventually that was pretty effective. It's kind of a good kind of
Okay. Besides I've never heard of rotating Scrum Masters. Anybody else does that? Rotating Scrum Masters?
Another thing we've covered is maintaining the features to span multiple teams. And we choose one person from one of the groups to act as the feature Scrum Master. And that person's responsible for supporting that feature.
So you would have multiple Scrum Masters for multiple teams?
We have a complex product, actually. I think it's more a messed up arrangement of the product. So what happens is the feature will span across teams. And in order to coordinate the code and understand so it doesn't get failed, which I'm responsible for, they can now that get out of a feature owner.
Okay.
And that person acts as the Scrum Master for us.
You wanted to add something?
I was just saying, I think it's important to note that to be Agile training, not just Scrum training, we made a mistake. Our Scrum training was very focused on Scrum. Stand up, 15 minutes, the questions, your retros, but no one understood why we did those. So it turned into a checklist for Scrum, not actual being an Agile team.
Very good point. When I say Scrum training, yes, I do mean Agile training as well, along with it. You need to understand the why for any of this before you do it.
We also have the scrums of the scrum, so there's one scrum that is scrum master.
So you have Scrums only for Scrum Masters?
Yeah, so like what you were saying for each feature, you
Oh,
get
yeah.
the scrum master, so go over here.
Okay. Something that's missing on this slide is you need to train your managers, like your higher management. They're not a part of your team, they're not coming to your daily stand-ups maybe, but they need to understand what does really mean, what does it mean to go Agile and adopt Scrum. They cannot have different set of expectations, and the team is being Agile and they're doing Scrum, and they're expecting something completely different. So your higher management has to be top-down. Your higher management has to be on board with the whole. Mistake number 6, following Scrum blindly. What that means is Scrum is a framework, right? It doesn't give you a recipe, it doesn't tell you all the things, techniques, and processes to follow. So you adopt something, you say we're going to follow it. But if you become blind in following that just because some other team was doing it or somebody told you, and you're not adapting your processes the whole time to fit your team's need, you're making a mistake. Shuhari is talked about a lot in the context of Scrum. How many people have heard of it? For those who haven't, it's a Japanese martial arts concept. It describes the stages of learning to mastery. So what it really tells you is first you learn, then you adapt a little bit, and then you transcend and do your own thing. In the context of Scrum, what it's saying is start with known set of practices, do as you're told to do, but then start looking for opportunities to improve. That's what retrospectives are for. But do find those opportunities, branch out, try to find other people who are doing Scrum and incorporate something from their processes. And once you keep doing that, eventually you're going to be at a place where you're going to set your own best practices. You will not be tied down to any techniques or processes. Like an example that's used is, once you start doing your daily stand-ups, the first thing you do is you follow the format of what you did, what you're going to do next, right? You start following that. Next thing you know, somebody said, hey, we also talk about what's blocking you. It's like, okay, that's a good idea. I'm going to incorporate that. What you did, what you're doing next, what's blocking you. Eventually, it will become so innate to you that you're not going to be talking about what you did, what you're going to do next. Eventually, you're just going to be making this, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what's done, and maybe not even talk about that and directly go to, this is what's blocking me, let's take this offline with these 2 people. Okay? It will become way more effective instead of following a script that you started from. How to avoid it is exactly that. Why not to do this? As I said, every team is different. Everybody has different constraints. My team, half of my team is in India. How many other people have global teams here? Yeah, more than half of the group. So that's one constraint. The other is how many people have full-time Scrum Masters. That's your workflow. The question you want to ask yourself is, are your tools driving your workflows? Or are your workflows driving the best tools that you can find for those workflows? And this happens for a lot of reasons. Your business has a license for a specific tool. There are some tools that are more popular than the other. Everybody else is using it, so you start using them. And then you try to adapt your workflows to fit those tools. Let's talk about what are the different tools people are using. I've used Rally, Trello. I've used a little bit of Jira. What are the tools you're using? Jira. TFS. Okay. Do you use the TFS like tickets?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else? What are the different tools people are using?
Sure. Influence. Jenkins. Garrett.
Okay, Jira. Any tools that we haven't yet talked about? Anybody else is using anything? Anybody using sticky notes? Post-its? No? Should be. Post-its are awesome. There is actually a tool that I even heard of yesterday in the Pavilion. Swift Kanban by one of the teams. And it was really, I hadn't heard of it before. It looked like Trello, but it was on top of Rally, and it had a Kanban workflow on top of Rally. It was very interesting.
Jira's Kanban workflows like so.
Yeah, Jira does too.
Yeah, Rally has it too.
Rally has it too. So far in my experience, I've had my challenges with that. You cannot customize the workflow a lot. You have to use the specified, given those columns. You can't customize those. That's been challenging for our team, so we don't use Rally for Kanban. Any other tools anybody else is using?
Agile prep.
Agile Craft. Is that more geared towards Scrum versus Kanban, or anything?
We covered both.
So, again, don't be afraid to go low tech. First, define your workflow. When you move to Agile, use post-it notes. We started with post-it notes too. And I think that was the best thing for at least the development team. The Scrum Master, me, was miserable transferring that information into the tool. But for the team, they were really efficient. So use post-it notes, define your workflow, then move to the tool. Don't hack your workflows to fit the tool. Like, your tools should not be dictators of your workflows. They should just be information radiators, just giving you what you need. Anybody wants to add anything to that mistake? Anything about tools? Anybody here feels that they're manipulating their workflows to fit the tools right now? So I'm not the only one? Okay, good. Micromanaging and overreacting. This is an interesting one. You might ask, why am I talking about this? It seems like a personal trait. This shouldn't be talked about in the context of Agile versus waterfall. Somebody is a micromanager, they're going to be micromanaged, right? But why I feel it becomes easier to overreact and micromanage in Agile? Because you are providing information on roadblocks, things that could possibly go wrong, way more frequently. Don't blame Agile for this. You're probably going to hit the same roadblocks, even in waterfall model. You're just not going to find out about them until much later on. So Agile gives you the opportunity to react to things, which means it gives you the opportunity to overreact to things. Transparency is good, but that also means if you start creating chaos and disturbing everything just because you found out something is not hitting its schedule this sprint, that transparency is going to make everything more inefficient. Shouting is not going to get you your turtles any sooner. Anybody here feels this way, or is it just me? Has anybody else experienced that overall, because of going Agile or Scrum, there seems to be a little bit more overreaction to
So who's it that's overreacting for you?
It depends. I've seen more from higher management direction. As long as you give them the right information, I usually see them not do that, but they have to get the right information. If they just see, oh, it's not hitting the sprint deadline.
So you should be happy that they're buying the
They're what?
You said you should have their support, so you do have that. So
target. I have to trust my team. If something is going wrong, they're going to tell me. And get more information. Maybe things are going wrong. But instead of reacting first, get more information. If you have a change, even if it is for good that you want to propose, try to wait till, if possible, try to wait for retrospective. Instead of just trying to change the process every other day because you had an awesome idea. Right? Wait for the retrospective, talk about it. Especially in the beginning, it's very difficult because you know you're doing a lot of things wrong and you want to change everything as you learn. Try to make small iterative improvements in your retrospective instead of trying to change everything. 9 of 99. That was not a part of my slides. That's the timing of it. Not having a good retrospective or a retrospective at all. A lot of times this happens because it is really easy to say, retrospectives are not adding any value to our velocity or our delivery. We don't need to be soft and talking about things that are not working for us and good about things. But really it is important to have good retrospectives. It makes your team more efficient. And that's yourself for your business. If somebody's saying, why are you spending time, like an hour wasted in retrospective, that's what you tell. It's like things that they did in a week, maybe they would have been able to do in a day if it had come up in retrospective. It makes the team more efficient, more happy. It is your opportunity to improve. Anybody here disagrees? They think retrospectives are always. Everybody here does retrospectives. Everybody. Everybody here feels they do good retrospectives. Okay. Few people don't feel that way. Why do you not feel that way?
It's just a complaining session mostly. They don't come up with solutions. It's more of a, we have a problem, it exists, okay, move on. There's no collaboration, no communication, how to come up with a way to fix it.
Okay. What, do you use a specific technique for your retrospective, or is it just random, everybody talks about things?
The teams individually talk about the projects.
Okay. Anybody wants to add to that?
I was just going to say, one of the things that our Scrum Master does a really good job of is changing up our retrospectives and the tools. From what I understand, she's derived from the core, there's free stuff that's out there on the web of how to pull information. I know people like it in fun ways, not just straight up what was good, what was bad, what can we do to fix it. Some of it is, if we had to develop a hack, or if you had to develop a hashtag for, describing the sprint, what would that be, right?
Okay.
So we're putting stuff like that out there. Some of it's goofy, some of it's, meaningful. And then we look at it and talk about it, and what does that mean? And also coming up with a solution to, make the team better. So using fun tools is very important. It keeps everybody fresh and interested.
That is a good segue into my next slide. You kind of summarized it. I don't even have to say anything. There are a lot of tools available that can help you run retrospectives. I'm going to quickly do an example. So, let me distribute this and take some of them. Let's take a sticky note. So, the things we do in a retrospective, I've learned about a couple of techniques. There's one called Glad, Mad, Sad. Anybody here has done Glad, Mad, Sad? Okay. So you can maybe take that back as a suggestion too, because it's not very high tech. You're not having to use any tools from outside. And so just write something that makes you about this whole conference, right? Anything that makes you glad, anything that makes you mad. I don't think we'll have the time to run the whole retrospective, but anything that makes you glad, put a smiley on it. Anything that made you sad about this presentation or the whole conference, and then anything that makes you mad. Well, usually you have no overlap, right? Everyone circles really badly. So, something that made you glad, something that made you sad, and what made you mad. Difference between sad and mad like that you hear a lot in our retrospectives. They make